everybody. This is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to discuss the 2016 Martin Scorsese 17th century Catholic movie called Silence. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutora in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. All right, so the reason I want to do a film review, and this is actually my first film review of this channel, which started in September 2021, is a couple of reasons. One thing, there's very few overtly Catholic movies out there. Sure, we could do an analysis of The Passion of the Christ by Gibson. But I want to do this movie because I've always wanted to see it. I think Scorsese is a good director. And this movie is on Amazon Prime. It just dropped on Prime. So most Americans have Amazon Prime, so you can watch this movie for free. And I definitely recommend that you watch it. Now, I will spoil the movie because the end of the movie is exceedingly important, and this is why. So pause this now, watch the 2.5-hour movie. Trust me, you want to watch this movie. And then resume the play of this the following day or later in the day. Okay, so I had talked about the Japanese Catholic population in the episode I did very early on about how the Vatican might have to move to Patagonia or somewhere because the way Europe is shaping up, Europe might not be Catholic for that much longer. And I did mention how there's been places in the world where Catholicism was relatively strong and now it was gone. And one of these places was Japan. So St. Francis Xavier, my son's named after him, Xavier, evangelized out to China and eventually died when he was over there. But because through the Portuguese traders and the French traders, they were able to spread Christian Catholicism, to Japan for several decades. This starts in the 1500s. Eventually, there was a growing population of Catholics, and the shoguns didn't really particularly like this because they were Buddhist and Shinto, and they didn't understand and didn't like this foreign influence. And so they started persecuting the Japanese Catholics. And so this movie is about that. So this movie is about a famous Jesuit Catholic evangelist, played by Liam Neeson here, who allegedly apostatizes. And so reports go back to Lisbon in this case of his possible apostasy. And so the director of the Jesuits in Lisbon sends these two young Jesuit priests, played by Adam Driver, probably best known for Kylo Ren, and Andrew Garfield, best known for Spider-Man, to go investigate. Now, originally, the director doesn't want him to go, but they plead, they're like, this is important. We have to find out if he truly apostates. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. So these two Jesuit priests are very earnest, and they're very infused with the faith. Now, remember, at this time, the Jesuits were like the shock troopers of the Counter-Reformation and of evangelism through the New World and in Africa and in Asia. And they helped retake Catholicism in Central Europe during this time. So anyway, so they eventually get over there and they meet some Catholic Japanese people that are in hiding because what's going on over there is if you are found to be a Catholic, they torture you. And there's like this litmus test that they make you do is that they'll have a portrait of Jesus, and if you step on it, that means you apostatize. So this is their test. So they'll get these crypto Catholics or these people they suspect of being Catholic and like step on it. If they don't step on it, then they typically are killed. And I think the Japanese Catholic persecution is probably most known for crucifixions. The shogunates crucified a lot of these people, and it's demonstrated in this movie. Beautifully filmed, by the way, on how they do it. So this is like the 1640s or so when this movie takes place. So Driver and Garfield are sent over there, and again, to make this episode short, I am going to spoil some things. They eventually get caught. They are giving sacraments to all these Catholics, and it's great. You hear the prayers in Latin. At one point, you hear Garfield doing the Anima Christi. And they're administering sacraments, they're doing baptism and marriage and confession and all these things. And they find this very fervent Japanese Catholic community, mostly among the poor. But eventually they split up, and they both get captured. And the movie is disappointing in this regard. So the movie is beautiful in that there is this running narrative of apostasy. Should you apostatize? Should you recant your faith? And the Japanese authorities and the main inquisitor who plays it very well, they do so well of manipulating. So a lot of it, you hear the inner conversations in Garfield's head. Garfield's the protagonist, and I think he does a good job with this movie. Driver is the best friend, but he has a supporting role. But you hear, like, Garfield knows that the things that the Inquisitor is saying is wrong. And so they're torturing these Catholics. And then he starts telling them, after they capture him, Father, if you just apostatize, we won't kill these people. You're the one who's killing these people by apostatizing. And of course, the Japanese authorities want the foreign priest to apostatize because they know, that that's an easy way to make the faith crumble over there, because these priests are recanting their faith, so you must recant it, and it would lead to such heartbreak to see these priests apostatize. So the authorities know exactly, like getting the priests, like Liam Neeson, right? He allegedly apostatized. Getting them to apostatize is a big deal. So they start manipulating him. It's just like it's like the devil in the head, right? You're causing this persecution. You're causing this heartache and this pain. And in the middle part of the movie, Garfield's defending the faith, and it's, again, I don't have time to talk about all these things, but it's just that beautiful thing. You see all these people, they're dying because you won't recant. Anyways, so he and Driver get separated. Driver eventually gets captured, and they do the same thing to Driver, where they're throwing these people out, wrapped up, these Japanese Catholics, into the ocean. And Driver, of course, still has his faith. He runs out and swims to try to save them, and then he drowns and they kill him. But he doesn't apostatize. So Garfield is the big coup that the Inquisitors want to apostatize. So they eventually have him meet Liam Neeson, and it's kind of like Colonel Kurtz from the Apocalypse Now. Like, you finally meet him. This is the end of the journey, because the movie really is good for any Catholic who's dealing with doubts in their faith, or any atheist, or just it puts you in that world, like a very foreign world. Like, most people don't know the history of 17th century Japan, but it's beautifully shot, and it really does talk about the Catholic faith, and it portrays it well. Now, Scorsese was raised Catholic, very Italian, and he left the faith mostly because he divorced and remarried, and he admits to that. But when he did this movie, he admitted, he's like, look, I've tried to leave the faith, that I can't. I'm Catholic to the bone. And so I think, he did The Last Temptation of Christ, which is just a sacrilegious movie back in the 80s. And a lot of his movies, of course, glorify sex and violence. But this movie, I think, was his way to atone, because it's a very Catholic movie. Very Catholic. So anyway, so Garfield eventually meets Liam Neeson. And Liam Neeson is wearing Japanese robes, and he admits that he apostatized and took on a wife and all this. And of course, this is a blow to Garfield, because this guy was like essentially St. Francis Xavier, like, oh my God, this man did apostatize, and it crumbles his faith. And the General Inquisitor is saying, he's going to apostatize tonight. I know it's going to happen, because they're really beating him down. Of course, he's imprisoned. He's deprived of food. They don't really hurt him, because they know they've learned, and they admit this in the movie, by killing the priest, you're just emboldening the Catholics there, because the blood of martyrdom makes the church grow, as Tertullian said. It was a poor corruption of what Tertullian said, but the blood of martyrs makes the church grow. So eventually what happens is they do so much psychological torture to Garfield's character, and of course, seeing Neeson writing books denouncing and refuting Catholicism. This is such a blow to him, but they eventually weaken him so much. And in the final, well, not the final scene, but one of the scenes is they're torturing all these Japanese Catholics in front of him, and again flipping them upside down and making them bleed, and telling them, look, we can stop this. All you have to do is just step on the image, just step on the image, just do it. Save them. It's your fault. Save them. And then throughout the movie, he flashbacks to why he became a priest, and how he always had a very close relationship with Jesus Christ. So at the moment that he's contemplating stepping on the image, Jesus who he's having a running dialogue with in his mind, comes to him and says, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's okay, just step on it. So Garfield steps on it and he apostatizes. And he recounts the faith and he refutes the faith. And the last 20 minutes of the movie is he essentially becomes Japanese. He does what Neeson's character was doing, writing books refuting Catholicism. He and Neeson are going through books and clothes that are coming in from the missionaries from Europe to make sure there's not any contraband, like Catholic rosaries and crosses and all these things. And so the movie, eventually Neeson dies, and then eventually they kind of fast forward to Garfield's death. Garfield marries a Japanese woman. He's a wealthy Japanese man. And he eventually dies, and they keep checking, they keep doing the apostasy test with him, and he never recants, he never recants, he never recants. And there's another character that I forgot to mention in this movie. He's a Japanese guy who's got the Judas. He's like always, anytime he's got to do the foot, he steps on it, and then he comes back and says, Padre, please forgive me. And so Garfield and he have this relationship. And he's the one who betrays them, actually, to the authorities. Anyway, so there's a scene near the end where after 15 years of apostatizing, and now he's a Buddhist, this man comes and says, please forgive me, please forgive me. And he's like, I'm not a priest, I'm not a priest. You know, he's openly says he's not a priest. And he says, I can't forgive you, you're not a priest. And eventually that guy doesn't step, and he eventually dies for his faith, which of course is a great character arc. So at the very end, Garfield dies, his wife buries him in the Buddhist style, and at the very end, you see her slip something into his casket. They put him in this wooden box. I guess that's what they did in 17th century Buddhist practices before they cremate him. And so they take him, and the narrator, who's this Dutch traveler, said, you know, the man, he had a Buddhist name. Garfield's character said he never recanted on his apostasy, and da. And so at the very end, they're cremating him in this box, and they zoom into the box, and you can see that the wife gave him a cross, and he's holding the cross as he's being burnt to death. And so this movie drove me crazy. This movie drove me crazy on so many levels. I think it's a beautiful movie. It's beautifully filmed, and I recommend every Catholic to watch this movie because it's one of the few overtly Catholic movies, and it will strengthen your faith to see what these poor Japanese Catholics did. And look, the community by this time, by 1680 when he dies, was pretty much extirpated. It was wiped out. And Japan went into 200 years of isolation. Now, when Commodore Perry came, and the U.S. essentially opened up Japan by shooting a bunch of missiles or shooting a bunch of cannons into, I think it was Nagasaki Harbor, and they had to reopen. They did find crypto-Japanese Catholics whose faith survived for 200 years, and they didn't have the sacraments. I mean, you can do emergency baptisms, so they did baptisms. They did find this community, but it was very small. And this movie is based on a book written by a very famous Japanese author, a Japanese Catholic author. And in the book, they don't have that ending where Garfield's Jesuit priest character is holding the cross as he's getting burnt alive. They leave the ending very vague. Anyway.